So I made this a couple weeks ago. I call it a wavy bowl, and it's pretty cool looking. And I know everybody doesn't have the capabilities to cut these out on a fancy CNC machine. So I promised that I would show you how you could make these pieces with all those joints without having a fancy machine or even a cutting fixture for your bandsaw. They're not going to be exactly like, and they're not going to be like this, but they could be. This is what we're going to make. This can be your first one. If you make this and you decide you like the process, later on I will show you a much twistier look that you'll be able to do just as easy as this one. And I'll explain how I did that one a little later on. And for some reason, if you're not happy with how your joints came out, I have a little bonus to tell you how you can turn those into a feature. And I think it'll look pretty good as well. What I just showed you is made out of 11 strips of wood. They look a lot like this, but they're not exact. You'll be able to put one on top of the other and you'll see they're not exact. There's going to be 6 cherries and 5 walnuts. I'll be cutting this line here on the cherry, and I'll cut that same line on the walnut. They'll fit together perfectly. No gaps, and it'll be a great glue joint. You're not going to have to make a special fixture or a special jig. All you need to do is have a bandsaw. So this might sound like a magic trick, but it's not. But it's kind of a trick of the trade, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So stick around and I'll show you exactly how I do it. So I'm going to try to explain how I cut the segments with a little wavy shape to them, and they were able to glue together with really nice joints. I'm going to use walnut and cherry here. I laid out a fairly gentle curve. You could put any kind of curve you want on it. This will work quite well because they're fairly flat curves. I wanted to leave enough stock on this side so that I could use it to clamp when I glue it. That's why I've left it like that. So when I did that, I found the points and I marked that. Now, when we go to cut this board's going to have to be that side of that line, otherwise we're not going to be cutting the walnut. So I've just marked that right here, and I know I've got stock. Turn it over and put the line here. All we have to do now is line this up right there, and we'll put a spot of hot glue in each corner so that this is attached on both sides. Let me get that done, and I'll go over to the bandsaw and show you how I cut it. And from there on it's pretty easy, but I'll show you a couple more steps. Alright, I'm all set up, ready to cut. I want to point one thing out. As we cut down the center of that line, if you should wander off of it, don't pull back and try to get back on the line. Just keep cutting slowly and work your way back onto the line. It doesn't even have to be on the line. This is a random cut, and as long as it goes together, it's going to look good. Let's give it a try. Alright, that was pretty successful. The hot glue kept these two pieces together. There's our bottom piece. You can't see it real well, but it fits right against the bottom. It also fits against the top, but we're not going to use that. Let's go back over to the bench and I will show you what we do next. Okay, one more step and we'll be on our way, and it'll be real simple to set up. So that board was cut on that line, so it fits together quite well. The walnut that was underneath was cut at the same time, and it fits perfect as well. It'll make a really nice glue joint. I decided I want 3/4 of an inch segment just to make it easy. Once you start doing these, you can pick whatever you want, but I have it at 3/4. I brought this up and I'm using that as my template. I brought it up here and then I marked it. Now we stack this one on top of the cherry and cut it, and we just keep going back and forth between the walnut and cherry, and we're going to mark our pieces so we don't get lost down the road. And how I make sure that, because I have a 3/4 segment, I marked about a 1/2 inch here. That means I want to get this up here, and it's kind of a oversized half, so I'm going to just go past the line and hot glue this one down now. So I know that that will be cutting it. So I've got the hot glue gun ready, and the way I've done these is I can go through fast enough that I don't even shut the hot glue gun off. And if I forget, this one shuts itself off after 8 minutes. So we've got that. I'll let that set up for a second, and I'll flip it over and do the other side. Meet you over at the bandsaw. We'll cut one more. We'll go over this one more time with these pieces since they're bigger. One time you'll be cutting with the cherry on the top. Once that's cut, you'll be cutting with the walnut on top and the cherry. Just keep going back and forth, cutting this profile through the other one. That gives you the shape you're looking for. Lay the shape out, get it on top of the piece that you're going to cut through, and you've got the line. Just back and forth, and you'll have it. Alright, we're ready to cut this. And again, one cut is going to give us the side of 2 different pieces. Alright, it is time to glue them together, and they fit really nice. Again, all I did was bandsaw this. I didn't do any sanding. I also mentioned at the beginning that they are not interchangeable. That's why you put these marks on here. If I put that one there, it does not fit. It rocks. So only one side fits on each one. It's easy enough to keep track of. I usually don't wear gloves when I use wood glue, but today, as soon as I get done with this, I'm going to go out and barbecue a couple of big thick hamburgers, so I don't want the glue on my hands. I'm going to get these stacked up and clamped so I don't make too big of a mess, and I'll be back and we'll get the glue on it. Okay, here it is all sanded up, and I think it looks pretty nice. I'm going to go ahead and cut a disc out of this piece, and we'll get it set up and we'll make us a little turning. So I'll be right back. So I was going to just turn a dish out of this. If you have this glued up and your joints look like that, and you are a little hesitant about cutting a ring into it, go ahead and make a dish. Put a little pedestal on it. I mean, this would look really nice, and like I say, I was going to do that, but I sketched it up and I want to cut it here and glue it on there and make it slightly taller. But don't feel bad about making a dish out of this, because it'll be a beauty if you do. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this ring off. There we go. Alright, this is how I glue them together. Before I made them into separate rings, I put a pencil mark on across, and there's that one that has a pencil mark. Now it's a matter of getting it pressed down. It'll start tacking up pretty fast. I can look at each one of these joints and it looks like it's lined up about perfect there. As I look at the width and then I look over here, that looks good. This one and this one look good. I like to let it sit for a little while before I try clamping it, because if I clamped it right now, it'd probably just kind of slide out of the way. Let me set it for a while, and then we'll get it clamped up. Alright, that's probably set for about 10 minutes. So I'll just put this board on it. It's got a piece of plywood underneath there. Have to pull that out just a little bit. And when I clamp it, I want to make sure it doesn't slide. And you can see the glue coming out here. And nothing moved. So I think it's good. So I've got it mounted up in the chuck now, and it's running pretty true. I think the only thing I'm going to do here is put a little OG shape on it. Just going to round this over and then curve back in. And this board is about 3/4 thick. I want to take about 3/8 of it off, maybe a little more. I'm going to start out with a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. And that's about 900 RPM, should be fine. Okay, that's not too bad. I'll go ahead and sand this side now, and I'm going to use sheets of paper. I might start with 80 grit, even though it almost doesn't need it, and work my way up to 400. I'm going to get my dust collector going, so it'll be a little bit noisy, but I'll do a little sanding, and when we come back, we'll be turning the back side. Okay, I'll go ahead and sand the back side, show you some of that. It's going to be the same thing. I'll use sheets of paper starting at 80 through 400, but this time I'll be sanding in reverse at about 400 RPM. Okay, I'm going to use the Minwax water-based sanding sealer, and then I'll be using the Minwax polyacrylic. At least on this first coat, I'm just going to brush it in there, and I like to get as much as I can and let it soak in for a while, then I'll wipe it off. So that's kind of the process here. Then I'll just wipe it down, and it'll be wiping it in at the same time, and to avoid streaks. So the next coats I put on, I won't brush. I'll just put it on with a piece of cloth or a paper towel. So I got all the sealer on. I put 1 coat of polyacrylic. I let that dry, and it really dries fast. I think it hasn't even been 10 minutes. This is 400 grit. This is what I do maybe between every other coat. You can see the dust, I think, right here. It's real fine because, well, it's fine paper, and the finish is on pretty smooth as it is. With these pieces, I like to kind of finish with the grain. I may go around like that, but I like to finish going with the grain. So then we'll just kind of blow it off. If there's anything left on there, you want to make sure you wipe it off. Little piece of cloth in the polyacrylic. So you're going to get all any kind of runs or anything that you see, but when you put it on thin, you really don't get them. It comes out pretty smooth. All I need to do is remove that tenon, which is hot glued on, and I'll be back and show you what we have. So here's the piece that I talked about in the beginning, where each one of these would be much different than the neighboring piece. And that's to kind of show you that when you cut along that line that we talked about before, if you did wander off and it changes it, it's not going to make it look bad. It might even make it look better in some cases. That's why I did this. None of these are alike. Alright, I don't have any lines on here to follow, so we're just going to go freehand. You can do it with a line or without a line. And that fits perfect. Also, if you glue this in halves, you can lay your rings out, cut them on the bandsaw on like a 45-degree angle, works quite well. Glue the rings together, and then you'll be able to stack them up. So all of this can be done on the bandsaw. You don't have to have that special ring cutter that I made. I just wanted to show you that. Okay, it's all done, and I've got a few things to show you here, and one of them is this bowl, of course. And it finished 8 inches in diameter. It's 2 inches tall and about a 1/4 inch wall. I used water-based sanding sealer and polyacrylic for the finish, but what the video was really about was how to cut these little strips without using any kind of a fixture or jig, and be able to glue them together with really good glue joints. That's why I picked a more gentle curve, and it made it very easy. And they all look identical, even though they're not identical, because it's kind of a freehand cut. So after I got done with that, yesterday I actually thought, well, let me show you how to make something that's totally random, totally freehand, no sketching of lines or anything. So that's why I made this. And every one of those cuts, I didn't have any idea what I was going to do. I just started cutting and making little twisty lines. And it's not glued together, and I will get it glued together and turn something out of it. I wasn't really planning on doing a video on it, but if you're interested, maybe I will. So that's just as easy to do as the first one that I showed you with the gentle curves. I also mentioned that if you're not happy with the joints for some reason, if your saw blade wasn't cutting quite as good as you'd like, there's a way to accent those joints, and that's what I did on this piece here. Now that's a piece of wood in the middle, and this is two pieces of the same wood glued together, and I think you can see the line in there. I used black dye in there with thick glue, and that would be a way, if you didn't have really good joints, you could do that and it would be a little accent strip. What I used for that was acrylic artist paint, and I've done that on a few things experimenting, and it works. And you want to use as thick a glue as you can for doing that, because if you had bad joints, you want that to be a filler. So I think that worked pretty good. But really, this is what we were doing, and if you're interested, go ahead and start by doing one of these. And if you think this was very beneficial, share it around to all your friends. I'd like to see everyone be able to try something like this and share it everywhere. All your friends, social media, wherever. I'd really appreciate that. So, I hope you enjoyed the process. Well, if you made it this far, I really appreciate it. And hopefully it means that you liked it. If you did like it, click that like button. Give it a thumbs up. Also, leave a comment as well. I read them all, and I'll do my best to answer any questions. As always, many thanks to all my subscribers. And if you're not, and you like what you saw, consider doing so. Thanks again, and until the next time, see you later.